Very own Brian Richardson.
Time for history lesson. All right, the late musician Prince, formerly known as the artist formerly known as Prince, released an album called 1999 on October 27th, 1982. He was always ahead of his time. Now, Prince's inspiration came from a documentary about Nostradamus. He had quatrains that allegedly predicted all kinds of strange phenomenon like the bombing of Hiroshima or the attacks on 9/11 or supposedly a worldwide terror that would occur in 1999. Now, with a bit of hindsight, Nostradamus' alleged foresight was applied to many world events. Could have been the impeachment of Bill Clinton, which completely boned modern politics. It could have been Woodstock 99, which was basically a fire festival that was landlocked and we didn't have TikTok, so you had to watch it on MTV. Or it could have been Y2K, a huge flaw in the way the computers stored time, which was supposed to end the world. Spoiler alert, it didn't. I need to pass along some wisdom so y'all can learn from our mistakes. Some of y'all are not as experienced as I am, so you need a brief explanation about Y2K and why it was actually a problem, i.e. why was everybody freaking out about it? Next, why didn't all the nonsense come true? And finally, despite all of the work that we, myself included, did, could it happen again? I'm giving this talk, so spoiler alert, it might. Okay, audience poll, who has heard of Y2K? All right, who was born after January 1st, 2000? Wow. All right, who was born before January 1st, 2000? Y'all are up past your bedtime. All right, who was born on January 1st, 2000? Any takers? Anyone? Well, this is a problem because this is the search result I got when I looked for that information, and according to Bing's AI search, you would have been conceived about 5 months after you were born. I cannot make this shit up, but AI can. So, what the hell happened? Personal computers in the 80s and 90s, the late 1900s. Yeah, that hurt. I took that personally, and I wrote it. They were primitive compared to what we're doing now. I could explain the math behind it, but Rae assures me some of y'all are drunk, so we're not going to do that. But here's the important part. Memory back then was expensive on these machines. So we, and I'm part of the generation of this, took a shortcut. We didn't store the century. Now, that created a couple of problems. Two major problems kind of fell into this Y2K bucket. The first is what I like to call 1980s time logic, which is not what happens when you get struck by lightning in a 1980s movie or like a Back to the Future type scenario. It's the idea that, what did programmers think you were going to do with the missing information? Well, first what they thought you were going to do is buy a new computer in 20 years, but that didn't happen. So you got two things. One is the time logic. So you could say that everything from 80 to 99 is the 1900s, and then everything from 0 to 79 is the year 2000. However, that doesn't take account of everybody that had been fucking born at that point. So, okay, well then we'll just do everything as the 1900s, which then your computer can go from like, well, why are women getting close to equality to why are women voting in like that much of an instant? Okay, bad example given the state of politics in the US now, but you kind of get my point. Now the second is the century rollover, and this sticker. Anybody seen this sticker before? The old Best Buy? Yeah. So that was a real thing. See, the logic would be that when the century flipped over from that midnight moment, that the clock wouldn't take that into account. And then we got the whole why are women voting thing, and it's all kind of going weird. And this is because, at this point in history, we got most of our information about computers from bad movies. We knew they were important, we just didn't know how the hell they worked. And so no shade on Sandra or Keanu, they did not write this shit. But this is what your parents were watching, and they were like, IP addresses totally have a number bigger than 255 in them. That happened in the net, that movie. Okay, so here's where we were technologically at the turn of the century. Who remembers the original The Fast and the Furious movie? Yes. Okay. Starring, Vin Diesel, Paul Walker, R.I.P., Ja Rule. Yeah. All right, here's the question. What were they stealing in the big heist in the movie? Combination VHS DVD players. Physical media is making a comeback, everybody. Y'all gonna be rich on eBay sometime soon. You're all hoarders, because your shit is cool. But that was the peak of technological progress in the day. So, at midnight in the year 2000, power plants were gonna go offline. Banks were going to fail. The team at NBA 2K was gonna go way back to the drawing board. And people would like freak out about this stuff on stuff like Coast to Coast AM with Art Bell. Oh, yeah. I was expecting a younger audience. Some of y'all are ahead of me. If you don't know, Art Bell was a broadcaster who was obsessed with conspiracy theories like aliens and government projects and Y2K. And Coast to Coast was basically an AM version of Joe Rogan, but like slightly less paranoid, slightly more informed, and I don't think they took HGH. He also co-wrote the book that The Day After Tomorrow was based on. Y'all, the 90s were something. But we all kind of held our breath coming up to December 31st, 1999. Midnight approached, and nothing happened. It was the year 2000 and our computers knew it. So, why didn't it end the world? Were we all freaking out about something that wasn't a real problem? No, it was a real problem. And I will tell you why none of this nonsense happened. Because we fucking fixed it. Hey, old people. I'm sorry. People who need to ask their doctor if Cologuard is right for them. Remember the ozone hole? You know why we don't talk about the ozone hole anymore? Because we fucking fixed it. I mean, I know that we're not used to fixing things we know are problems now, but that's how we rolled back in the late 1900s. So, now, the real question, who fixed Y2K? Nerds, weirdos! Weirdos helped fix Y2K. These are people who you had that uncle who wrote COBOL for the bank who really liked trains. Yeah, okay. I got a hand raise on that one. Folks who founded science fiction conventions, the OGs of this kind of stuff. People who played GURPS. Ever rolled up a GURPS character? Ever finished rolling one up? No. I'm one of those weirdos. No, not GURPS, that. But I'm one of those people, like those early computer weirdos. And it's because of this. See, most computers back in the day were hobbyist items, but this is the most corporate company to ever corporate. This is IBM, International Business Machines. In 1981, in August, they released the IBM 5150. This is now known as the IBM Personal Computer or the IBM PC. They were trying to chase a trend, and everybody in IBM was like super corporate, socks, ties, etc. They worked on mainframes, but Boca Raton is where they kept their weirdos. They prototyped this machine in 40 days. An insane timeline. It's crazy, right? They were chasing the success of the hobbyist market. Apple, Commodore, Sinclair. Commodore was my first computer, right? IBM was like, well, let's grab this cheap processor. This is Intel 8088. No one's ever used this thing before. We'll make like 250,000 units. They exceeded their sales goals by 800%. They were selling 40,000 of these a month by 1982. And there was a huge market for this. And this really succeeded because of one major change that they made, one decision that they made in Florida. And it's this thing called the BIOS, Basic Input Output System. It's 8 kilobytes of code strapped to the motherboard. The reason they needed this is all those original computers I showed you, they were super proprietary. They only ran on like those systems. VIC-20 code ran on a VIC-20, not on a Commodore 64. And there was like almost no operating system to these things. So IBM wanted to ship 4 different operating systems. So they needed something that would bridge the hardware to the operating system when they switched it. And that's what the BIOS did. It's an intermediary, an abstraction layer. So you code it to the BIOS, not to the platform. And IBM's business took way off, so everybody wanted in this action. You could buy all the parts. This was all off-the-shelf hardware. They didn't custom anything. It was 40 days. It's IBM, Motorola. They just bought stuff the same place everybody else did. But if you didn't have the BIOS, it wasn't an IBM PC. And even though they published the code in the book, you legally couldn't use it on a competing product. But if you reverse engineered it, you could make your own BIOS, and that's what Compaq did in 1982 with this portable computer, weighed about as much as a station wagon as far as I can tell. But this was the first thing that was PC compatible. All the IBM software worked out of the box. And the minute that happened, the market just took off. There was this race who could clone the most PCs. And this is why DOS, Windows, and Linux got super huge. but they inherited a problem. That original PC didn't keep the time when it was turned off. And it got turned off a lot. Mainframes and companies stayed on. These PCs got switched off at night. Turned it back on, it was January 1st, 1980, right? So they released the PCAT a couple years later and put something in it called an RTC, or real-time clock. I'm gonna call it a clock chip because y'all are drunk and don't like acronyms. But the thing about this is it had a battery in it. And so you could keep the time when it was off. That's great, except the model they picked didn't store the century. Now, they fixed this eventually, and they added a century byte. By the time they did it, IBM PCAT was so popular, it was the thing that got cloned. So when you bought a PC back in the day, it was PCAT compatible on the sticker. And IBM was the design, and that clock chip was the design, and everybody copied it. And by the time IBM added the century information, it was too late. They got order 66. The whole market took over. And they copied that problem. They copied the same clock chip, the same BIOS, and the same lack of a century byte. And some of those clocks that they shipped had the rollover bug. When the clock flipped over at midnight, the century didn't update. Why are women voting? Oh no. So, we understood the logic. It wasn't hard, it was just hard to deploy. So we got to work and we fixed it. We learned and we moved on. Or did we? See, that original we forgot the century problem was on DOS and Windows systems. Remember Unix, the mainframe thing? What was happening there? Well, Unix had a different way of storing the time. They did the obvious logical thing. They stored the seconds in a signed 32-bit value, which counted the number of seconds since midnight UTC, January 1st, 1970. These fuckers play GURPS. And zero is the dividing line. Positive takes you into the future, negative takes you into the past. Now, I don't want to do the math here, but really 2 to the 31 minus 1 seconds seems like a lot. There's 31,536 seconds in a year. Don't you fucking start singing Rent, you theater nerds! We do not have the rights for that shit. Do not get us canceled. But that's not an infinite number of seconds. They have something called a Unix epoch, the time period it can measure. And it ends on January 19th, 2038 at 3:14 a.m. We are doing this shit one more time. All right, so this is, Y2K 38 is basically the Too Fast, Too Furious of this very improbable franchise. Think of Unix as Ja Rule, right? The OG. He didn't come back, and when they traded Jeffrey Bruce Atkins for Christopher Brian Bridges, this shit got ludicrous. And like Luda and the Fast Family, Linux blew up in the 2000s. It is running damn near everything on the cloud. It's running storage systems, it's running databases, it's running AI, it's running those damn cars that Cypher tried to drop on everybody's head. Linux is a clone of Unix down to the timekeeping system. But we fixed that, right? Well, they use 64-bit integers now, which takes you to, let me check my notes, 292 billion years, over 20 times greater than the estimated age of the universe. Try working that into a new version of Rent, you fucking theater nerds. Even he doesn't have the breath control for that. But you can't just go around changing the 64-bit value and say like, oh, this is 32-bit. Now we're gonna do 64-bit. That breaks anything that's compatible with 32-bit, like, I don't know, the database that keeps all the Social Security birth dates that happened before 1970. You can't just like patch one piece, you have to kind of do the whole thing. And it's all based on this kind of problem of you have to update all the pieces. And it's gonna take a different kind of weirdo to do this. And I know exactly one subculture at DragonCon that is primed for this fix, and it's the furries. The next generation has to fix this, but they have to know. We've got 12 years to warn them. So please, share this information with a furry. Look, nobody at IBM knew they were making history with the 5150. They accidentally kickstarted an entire industry. And look, time is hard. I'm in my 50s, I feel this, the concept of time is hard. But so is representing it in a digital product. You have to just stop somewhere at good enough and hope that everybody kind of evolves and moves on and learns from your mistakes. So this is a learning opportunity. Like, if we don't fix Y2K 38, it's gonna be fucking ludicrous. Thank you.